Namasri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swamine Tapaharini. Our world, a disorder in order, is the topic for discussion today. Our world, we all understand, today it's a kind of chaos, a disequilibrium, both within and without. So there is a lot of peacelessness around, stress, anxiety. That means there is no equilibrium. We are not attained to that perfect repose that we want to attain to. That perfect equilibrium and peace where there is no struggle, no tension, no worry of any kind, and where you have the highest peace. That is our desire, basically. Everybody is desiring that only. In fact, we have been struggling for ages, for millennia, to set things in order, generation after generation. Through our knowledge, through our education, through our technology, through advancement of technology, we have been trying to solve. What we are trying to solve is this. We want to create a perfect world. Yes? A perfect world where everybody has everything he or she aspires for, and there is no suffering and there is no misery in the world. Actually, that has been our aspiration. We have been trying and trying and trying, but that equilibrium or that perfect world order that we have been aspiring actually is eluding us. But we have the hope. If not today, tomorrow we will be able to achieve. If not this generation, the next generation will be able to achieve. What we should achieve? A perfect world order. In the sense, there is enough money, there are enough amenities for everybody, so that everybody can lead a peaceful and comfortable life. That has been our aspiration. I've been hoping for ages to attain to that perfect world order. We have not succeeded so far, but we have the hopes that we will succeed sometime in the future. That is the hope. That hope only will make us exert to make things, whatever that things that we are doing in the world. We are trying to advance technology further. We are trying to find solutions to problems. But you find solution to one problem, another problem is ready for you. So, we have created whatever that we have done so far. It has solved as many problems as it has created. So that is the state of affairs in the world. We don't want things to be like that, but that's how the state of things are. So this idea of millennium, we have discussed it when we were studying this Swamiji's Jnana Yoga, that there will be a perfect world order after some time in the future. There, everybody will be happy, so there will not be much of conflict in the society, there will not be much of struggle in human life. For whatever, every desire of every individual is practically satisfied or met with. So we are trying to reduce the burden on individuals, reduce the burden on human life, but life seems to be more burdensome as the time rolls on, as the years move. So what is our understanding here in this culture? We have understood Prakriti is by nature disequilibrium. Prakriti, the creation, means disorder, disequilibrium, entropy, chaos, by nature. It is its nature. And you are trying to fix that. No, by nature it is entropy. So there is no perfection in Prakriti, no perfection is possible. Its design is such. There cannot be two perfections. But what lies beyond the Prakriti, namely consciousness or Purusha, Chaitanya or God is perfect. The creation cannot be perfect. The Creator is perfect. So through creation you have to go to the Creator. There the equilibrium exists. In Prakriti there is no equilibrium. There cannot be any equilibrium, however hard you might try. They have understood this in no time. So instead of actually trying to fix this world, the external world, the Rishis were very, very wise. They only exhorted us to transcend Prakriti, to go beyond Prakriti. See, Advaita says, the non-dual philosophy says the world is unreal, no creation has ever happened. Okay? No creation has ever happened, only consciousness exists, only truth exists, only God exists. But is that our experience? No. We have the world of five senses, we have the mind with which we perceive the external world. That is only real for us. The Creator behind the creation is totally unreal for us because there are so many atheists. And theists also, those who believe in God also, they have not seen God, but they believe. Right? But atheists, they don't believe in God at all. No such thing as Creator. Only creation we see, we perceive, we understand, so that alone exists. What we perceive with the five senses, that alone exists. Nothing else exists, there is nothing beyond. So, forget about that Advaita, that Kevala Advaita, where they say no creation has ever been done. Only consciousness exists, only truth exists, only God exists. We are nowhere near that truth, though it is the absolute truth. Only after attaining to Samadhi or Nirvana, you understand that everything is a dream, everything is Maya, there is nothing like substantial, real universe. It is all fiction, it is all because of the mind, again a fictitious entity. The world is just an appearance in mind. Mind itself is a fictitious entity. So any appearance in the fictitious is also a fictitious entity. So both they make it zero. Both the mind and the world which appears in the mind. And then they come to the conclusion, the mind is only a reflection of consciousness, an inferior reflection of consciousness, like a shadow. It's an unreal entity. So we are nowhere near that. There's no point in teaching that Kevala Advaita to people of the present age, because we are nowhere near that idea, even intellectually. So what is our understanding of the world? You just see the external world is changing, and also the seer is changing. I am the seer. We are all the seers. We perceive the universe, we experience the universe. How did you perceive the world when you were a child? You had certain kind of perception. How did you look at it? You just see how children look at the world, full of hope, full of expectation. Everything is a wonder for them. What kind of attention they give to even small things. A housefly, a rat, a cat, a squirrel, a bird, full of attention. The child is. Everything appears so beautiful and colorful for the child. Now you have become a young man, full of desires. You struggle and struggle. You see the world in a different way. Now you are married, you have 2 children, you have 40s, 50s. Another world appears for you. Right? As the experience grows, as you grow in experience, the way you perceive the world, you look at the world also changes. And 70s, 80s now you have come, with 60 or 70 years of experience of life behind you. And you perceive a different world. Has the world changed? Not so much, but this has changed. A child, this is different. A young man, different. Middle age, different. Old man, different. As the experience keeps growing, the same universe, but you see it differently. And also, is the universe constant there? No, it is also changing. How Hyderabad was 50 years before, how it is today. The external also is changing. The seer is changing and the scene is also changing. The seer is changing faster than the scene, if you ask me. The external world is not changing as fast as you change. This is changing very fast. So, if you take even the external world as real, this Prakriti as real, the physical world, the world of 5 senses, but the perceiver of this Prakriti, the perceiver of this world is changing too fast. And we are coming closer to death very fast. That's why they said, or people have said, the world is Maya. Because the perceiver, the seer actually is changing too fast and coming closer to death. So even if we fix the world, let us say the perfect world, everything is beautiful, everything is orderly, everybody has everything to enjoy, but this is too short an existence. This is too short an existence. Then what is the point in fixing the external world? Even if you have that utopian idea that you will be able to fix and you will be able to create a perfect world where The wants of every individual is satisfied. Every want is satisfied of every individual. Even if you may create such a world, but how long you will enjoy? As long as you live, how long you live? Our existence is just a trifle. Today we are there and tomorrow we are not there. We are too impermanent, an entity, even if there is a perfect world. So from these observations, they have come to the conclusion that there is no equilibrium in this world of phenomena. No order is possible in the world of Prakriti. Order belongs to some other realm. That is God, that is consciousness. So we have to go beyond Prakriti. So then they turn their attention inward, that what is that, how do I perceive the world? I perceive the world in my mind. Then what is mind? What is happening there? So in Yoga Vasishta, the word is Mano Manana Nirmana Matrameva Jagatrayam. Cogitation happens there, mind. Just sometimes when you see a music audio, the waves are fluctuating like this. So in your brain, this fluctuation is happening constantly. That's called cogitation. We don't see that. Because of that, you perceive the world. The perception happens, whether the world truly exists there or not, but the perception happens within ourselves. And when you are in deep sleep, no perception happens. The mind is quiet, no world is being experienced by us. So when you wake up, then again, the turbulence starts. The calm ocean becomes full of waves. It becomes choppy. And then the world comes into our experience. So it's mano manana nirmana matrameva. Because of the cogitation of the mind, I am experiencing world, I am seeing the duality, I am seeing the world of name and form and the differentiation. So the question arose in their mind, how can I stop this cogitation? If I stop the cogitation of the mind, the world stops for me. If the world stops, I will be in equilibrium. I will be in consciousness. I will be in God. And so they have struggled only to decimate their mind, to put an end to this cogitation. So they resorted to meditation. Then they turned inward, and then they found that it is desire that's making the mind agitate. So they reduced the desires in the mind as less as possible. They made the wants minimum and minimum and minimum, minimum. And they came to a point. And the last desire is the desire to live. Avidya, smita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. The last desire is desire to live. When I don't want to enjoy anything of this world, why do I have to have this body and mind? Why should I get identified with them? Why should I get attached to these two? No attachment. Well, even it goes also, it's okay for me. And when I reached that point, the mind dropped. And then they experienced consciousness. Then they experienced God. Not ordinary courage, not one-day practice. Months together, years together, they did the penance, and then they had that truth at last. Oh, it's all illusion, it's all dream, it's not real. Only God is real, only consciousness is real. This is equilibrium. Behind this disequilibrium or entropy or disorder or the mind or this world, there is this perfect equilibrium, perfect order. And through this disequilibrium, through disorder, you have to come to that order. And all this disequilibrium exists only in the order. Okay? There cannot be any wave without ocean. But today you are so intensely identified with the wave that you have totally forgotten the ocean behind. And that's the reason our lives have become so miserable. At least a consciousness, an understanding, an intellectual understanding that there is God behind. There is truth behind. In Him all the drama is happening. We are so much interested in drama, you have forgotten the director. We are so engrossed in the magic, we have forgotten the magician, as Sri Ramakrishna says. So the magic is so enticing, so captivating. And we are totally immersed in the magic and the magician, we have forgotten. That is the trouble. Otherwise, you can be conscious of both. That's why in the case of illumined soul, realized souls, what happens is this. They are conscious of both. They are conscious of the drama and the director. They are conscious of the magic and the magician. Ignorant people, dullards, they are only conscious of the magic and they are totally immersed in the magic and they forget the magician. And then trouble. There will be trouble. The magic is not all that good. Okay. There are all kinds of. So in a drama, there will be tragedy also. When you get carried away by tragedy, if you forget the director, when you remember the director, then you understand the director is directing the roles and giving the instructions, and so the actor is playing out the role. And you are conscious of all that. So, okay, this is part of the drama, now tragedy scene is being enacted. If you forget the director, you forget that the tragedy scene is being enacted as part of the drama, and you get totally immersed in the tragedy, and then your heart starts palpitating. Identification, that's all, trouble. So in our world also today it's like that. We have totally forgotten God. So deeply attached to the body and mind, and this is my existence. I mean only the body. When Swamiji was in America, a lady one day came to him and told, Swamiji, this world is an old school where we come to learn our lessons. And Vivekananda asked her, who told you this? And somebody told me, she said. Is it your conclusion or somebody else has told? And she said, I heard like that, the world is an old school where we come to learn our lessons. And Swamiji said, I don't think so. Then what do you think, Swamiji? He said, it is a circus where we're all clowns and tumbling. Okay, circus, we're all kind of clowns, tumbling again and again. And then she asked, Swamiji, why do we tumble? We want to tumble, that's why we tumble. When you are tired of this tumbling, you quit the world. This is what is happening. Swami did not buy her idea that it's an old school where we come to learn our lessons. He said it's all circus, where we are playing the role of a clown and we are tumbling again and again. So when there is circus, definitely there must be some spectator, right? Only circus will not happen like this. Circus will always happen for the sake of spectator. There is a spectator watching the circus and enjoying the circus. The spectator is God. So when you're tired of this tumbling, when you're tired of this role of a clown in the circus, then you don't want to tumble anymore. Then why all this trouble? Then you will go and sit in the spectator's role. Nicely we can enjoy circus thereafter. So that's why Sri Ramakrishna says, first realize God and then actually come into the world. Make it the first and foremost priority. If the desire is strong, you will attain something. That's what every sage said. Whatever may be the circumstances in which we are, whatever may be the responsibility that we have, okay? If the desire is strong to know the truth, something will definitely happen for everybody. Last week somebody was telling, Swamiji, you are telling all these things, very difficult for people to practice in the world. You make it simpler. You tell them that actually in families everybody should live in happiness and peace. Everybody should understand each other better. We are telling the same thing, Amma, but it's not happening. Am I not telling that? Everybody wants to live in peace only, but that's not happening. That is happening because of ignorance. Our rishis have not said anything which is not practical. We come to such conclusion that it's nice, mera se nahi hoga. It's not possible for me to practice this. I have so many things to do. No. The will is not strong, that's all. The will and the desire to know the truth is not strong, that's all. If that is strong, everything else will take care of. Lord will arrange things, adjust things for you, if the desire is strong to know Him. But if the desire itself is weak, naturally mind seeks all these excuses. It is not possible for you, mind will say, and you will not do any sadhana. What are the little that you can do also, you will not do. Then how can you expect God's gaze to come upon you? Sri Ramakrishna says the mercy of God's grace is always blowing. Only thing is you have to unfurl your sail to make good use of that grace. The grace is there. And particularly in this Kali Yuga, Lord is so kind and so compassionate. He is looking again and again towards His children. Any of my child wants me? No. He is disappointed in a way. All His children want only His creation. See, they only want the magic, they don't want the magician. What I can do, Lord is saying. Suppose He comes into the world today, like the way Sri Ramakrishna had come. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, sometimes God comes into the world in human form just to have the facts first hand, how things are happening in my creation. Not that he cannot know, sitting in heaven or sitting in Vaikuntha, because he is all pervading. Okay, he can know, but he wants to perceive things through human form, the best of the forms that he has created, the best of his species we are. So like a king actually goes into his kingdom in disguise, to understand things firsthand. He doesn't have to go like that. He can send his spies. They will bring information for him, news for him. Okay? State will have intelligence department, right? The chief minister will come to know everything through that department. Regularly they will give him briefing, how things are happening. Like that, the king can send spies and have the information, how things are going on in his kingdom. Sometimes Lord comes in human form. But he doesn't take, for him everything is drama, right? He is the director of the drama. And he will see the world and then says, oh, he will compliment himself. Lord will pat himself, okay, for the wonder of the magic that he has created. The director will congratulate himself. Oh, my Maya is so perfect. Not one actually understands that he or she in bondage. That's what he wants. He wants his Maya also to be perfect. He has designed Maya in such a way. Not one should escape from this Maya. So if one escapes from Maya, he thinks that there is some defect in my design. One side, that is also there. Another side, grace is also there. That's why this world is a world of paradoxes. You cannot simply just say one line and say this is the world. The world of paradoxes. Our rishis have found this out and then they said, no, this world is always a mixture of both. Good and bad. Okay, pain and pleasure, it's mixture of opposites. So the only solution is to transcend it and become one with God. The great physicists like Max Planck, Werner Heisenberg, Niels Bohr, I think Pauli, they all had come to the same conclusion towards the fag end of their life after making so many experiments, atomic experiments. Particularly Werner Heisenberg, I think the German physicist, he published a book in 1961, Physics and Philosophy. Physics and Philosophy, wherein he says, I remember in my discussions with Niels Bohr, for a very long period of time, they would have, for hours together, they would have discussions, and the discussions invariably end in despair. They would not be able to come to a conclusion. And after that, he said, I used to go to a nearby park, and I used to take a walk. And I used to put this question to myself, could nature be so absurd as is being observed in these atomic experiments? Heisenberg's uncertain principles, those who have physics background, they know. You cannot actually determine the position, velocity and momentum of an atomic particle simultaneously. If you can know the position, you cannot know the momentum. If you can know the momentum, you cannot know the position, something like that, if I remember correctly. So fundamentally, that you cannot accurately tell this is the position. If you can tell that, actually, you cannot determine its momentum. If you can tell the momentum, you can determine the position. With 100% accuracy, you cannot tell. So that actually perplexed them, these physicists, and they said, this is a world of paradoxes. There are so many paradoxes. The world is full of paradoxes when we understand. Our body is also full of paradoxes in the sense. Today in the morning, when pediatrician doctor was telling, today there are as many children who are malnourished as there are children who are obese. Okay. So we want actually equilibrium here, but it's not equilibrium is not happening. One side you have obese children, too much of food, more nourished. And one side actually we have undernourished children. In our own body you just see, there is conflict. Tongue wants to eat more. The remaining parts in the digestive system, they say no. But there is no actually sync. They don't actually, they have to work in tandem because they're after all, parts of the same body. They're parts of the same body, they should work in cooperation, in coordination. Tongue wants to eat more, and the body parts, the digestive parts are saying, no, enough. Paradox. Is it not a paradox? So we live in this paradoxical world. That's why our rishis have said that this world will always remain a world of paradoxes. And Niels Bohr said, contraria sunt complementa. Okay? Opposites complement each other, not here in this relative world. We call something as paradox only because we cannot explain it logically. Because it defies logic, we call it a paradox. And when you put the question, why this is why it's such a paradox, then you understand the whole Prakriti itself is a paradox. And the opposites meet only in consciousness, in the absolute. You can explain that only when you touch the absolute. There is no other way. So all our trouble is because we are so deeply attached to Prakriti, we are not able to perceive, we are not able to see the Purusha, the consciousness behind the Prakriti. And our identification with the physical body and mind is so intense that today the whole world is drowned in a sea of worldliness. In Puranas we have a story, the story of Hiranyaksha. They said Hiranyaksha took the whole earth and put it into the ocean. The earth got drowned. It's all the figurative expression. Most of the Puranic stories, they convey a philosophical truth, but they put it in a figurative way. Because if the philosophical truth is given as philosophy, not many people will be interested to know. And it also, appears very dry. So he has drowned the whole earth in the ocean. He just lifted it up and put in the ocean, it got drowned. The Lord had to incarnate as a boar, Raha Avatar. And then he had to kill this Hiranyaksha and lift the earth up from the ocean. He bailed it out. What it means? That means the whole world is sunk, the sea of worldliness. And Lord comes and then actually to re-establish dharma, as it were, and tells us that you are not the body, you are not the mind. O man, transcend Prakriti. That is what actually establishment, dharma samsthapana. So incarnations, messengers of God, sages and rishis, they come in our midst and tell us, oh man, this is not the direction, this is the direction. This is the path towards perfection. Take this route and you will attain peace and fulfillment. Don't get stuck at the level of the physical and the psychological. Don't make this world a total reality. It's a partial reality if you want to put it like this. But don't make it the be-all or end-all of your life. Don't make it the ultimate objective. You need to transcend death. You need to become immortal. Seek truth, seek God. They come and tell us. But most of the time we pay deaf ear to these sayings and to these teachings. Today you just see our educational systems. They all help man only to tweak desires. Our philosophers say actually cut down desire and it becomes easy for you to know the truth. Our education systems are designed in such a way. You just go to a tribal man, he has very minimum desires. But we want to develop them. We will bring, He is peaceful, happy. No competition, no comparison, perfectly happy. But we don't consider a man sitting in the forest as advanced in evolution. And we think we are more progressive, we will disturb his peace. Till we disturb his peace, we don't leave him to live in peace like. Because we don't have peace, how can he have peace? Come. We will come and we will educate them. And then the desires get multiplied. Then he also will have stress and tension, like us. And then he will have to seek peace again. Then he will have to come to philosophy and spiritual discourses. And this is the full circle. This is the full circle. Everybody has to go through this full circle. Right? Otherwise, this philosophy, nobody will be interested in. Only when the peace is troubled, then you will be interested in philosophy and a book like Bhagavad Gita. Everything is going smooth and normal. Nobody will be interested. So the world in that way is drowned in a sea of worldliness. For our sages, it did not take much time to understand that we have started off on a wrong premise. This I have told long back. What is the wrong premise? that we have all started off, the modern civilization particularly, that I am the physical body, without questioning. Am I the physical body? No, if a simple logic if you apply, say my body, my mind. No, body belongs to you, mind belongs to you. But you are not the body, you are not the mind. The very language that you speak proves that. But you don't understand that. Okay. Then you have started off on the premise that I am the physical body. Then what is my objective in life? To provide as much comfort to this physical body as possible. That has become the sole objective of the modern civilization. That means you have not even come to the understanding that the source of suffering is not the physical body, whether you have something for the physical body or not. It is the mind which feels the physical body. The body doesn't experience itself. It is the mind which experiences the body. Because the mind is identified with the body and attached to the body, and mind feels the pain thinking that I don't have this. That means my body doesn't have this. It is the mind which experiences the pain. At least if you come to that point, you will introspect on what is the mind and how can I control mind, how can I transcend mind, the life begins. No. We have not even come to this conclusion. Civilization as a whole I am speaking. Here and there, few individuals have come to this conclusion. Civilization as a whole, even now, believes that I am the physical body, general people. So the goal of life is to provide as much comfort and convenience to this physical body as possible. And how can I do that? By procuring as many material things as possible. That's all. But you just see the world, people who have the best of the things, are they really happy? No, now they are finding it out. No. Probably I have done something wrong. It's not the physical things that give me happiness, something else I have to do. What is that? Okay, let me focus on the mind. Where is the source of trouble? It is the mind. Now the question is arising, what is mind? How to control it? Then they slowly come to philosophy. Why don't you tell this in the beginning itself? And our rishis have told the same thing. No, don't waste time seeking things for the physical body. Last class also we discussed Sri Ramakrishna, a married man. Lived like a beggar. Right? No own house. Never bothered to take some employment. Simply on Mother Kali's temple prasada. Lived a full life. Never thought for a moment, how can I provide for this body? He was so sure that the Creator's responsibility, it will happen. But we have to worry so much for this. No, today all our worry, soul worry is because of this. How can I provide for this? How can I provide for this? If you are in America, you may have to worry, but in India at least you don't have to worry. There are many anadanas happening. Okay, you really, okay, you just settle down somewhere near the temple where every day anadana happens, and then do the spiritual sadhana. Daily go to the nearby place and meditate. Every day go to anadana and then satisfy your hunger. Very soon, people will seek you out. They will make a beeline. Right, here is a yogi who is trying to control mind. They will put garlands on you. They will break coconuts in front of you if you can just sit here. Right? They will make an ashrama, construct an ashrama for you, and they will create samsara if you are not very alert, I am telling you. Right? If you are not alert, very soon they will see that, they will ensure that. Okay? You stop your meditation. Okay. You have cut short your spiritual sadhana. They will ensure that. Unless you are very alert and you run away from the place. This way, not now, but sometime back, they would not stay in one particular place because people would seek, realize, and then they create all the samsara. So the yogi will run away. He doesn't want to be spotted. So he will go to a new place. A new place before the people identify and spot him, and he will run away from that place also. That is how they used to live in this country. They don't want to be spotted by people. Kind of avaduta life. They would be on move all the time. Because otherwise this entanglement will get. And you think, some people are there, I have attended Siddhi because I have done so much of meditation. You see how many things people are bringing. Okay? All this would not happen, without Siddhi, my acquiring some Siddhi. And there only, you have acquired Siddhi, that only the Siddhi, and thereafter no spiritual progress, no God realization will happen. And again, after a long time, you will realize, this is all samsara. Okay? The Sri Ramakrishna story, that Kaupina and cat. You may be knowing the story. One sadhu, so he had 2 kaupinas, loin cloths. So one day he put it on cloth line for drying, and it fell down, and then one rat ate that up. So now this loin cloth got torn. Then he thought, what is the solution? Only 2 loin cloths, one has gone. So what is the guarantee? If I bring another, again it might, what is the guarantee that it might not cut this? So he decided that I need a cat. To control this rat, he brought a cat. So when you have cat, you have to feed the cat. It doesn't stay just like, you have to feed the cat with milk. So then he understood then how to feed the cat. I need milk for cat every day. So he brought a cow. Cow means a calf. So cow means every day you have to milk the cow. Okay, it doesn't happen just like that. You have to bring fodder. Okay. Then how it will happen? How can I take care of this cow alone? Then he went for marriage. Who will manage the cow? Samsara. Okay, from Kaupina to from where he has gone, you just see how much of samsara. So to keep the rat at bay, you needed a cat. And to maintain the cat, you needed a cow. And cow and calf and then house, cow cannot just stay like that, you need a cow shed. And ultimately, he landed up there. So this is how we increase samsara for us, and we find it difficult to observe the mind. So this is how Rishis have said that keep life as simple as possible. Then it becomes easy for you to observe the mind, the workings of the mind, the mechanics of the mind. And slowly you can stop the gyrations of the mind through renunciation. So renunciation has a higher purpose. Last class I told this way, the most affluent societies are suffering so much, though having all the physical affluence. That is because they are totally helpless with regard to controlling the subtle, controlling the mind, controlling the feelings or emotions. They are so subtle to control the thoughts, not easy. Now it is such a scattered and a dissipated mind, and to bring it together, it's like mustard seeds scattered on the ground. So mercury you put on the ground, it gets spilled over all across. And to gather it, to ingather it, to collect it, not an easy thing. Mustard seeds you put on the ground and then try how difficult it is to collect, you will understand. So like today our minds have become like this. Mustard seeds fallen on the ground. And the mind becomes so difficult to control it naturally. And that's the reason in this culture, renunciation is extolled, renunciation is appreciated, because it has a purpose, it has a goal. That is namely realization of God. To transcend Prakriti, it becomes easy for you. So when you become actually completely established in total dispassion or renunciation, mind, desireless, it cannot survive, it disappears, the ghost disappears. When that disappears, it is samadhi, it is nirvana, it is realization. You are God then, thereafter. With full awareness, with full understanding. And you have realized the truth experientially, not intellectually. Intellectually, anybody can read book and understand things. It's not such a great thing. But to know the truth, to know God in experience is the challenge. And only this culture, I want to tell you, only this culture has produced such exceptional souls. They're exceptionally bold and exceptionally courageous, who have undertaken this journey and reached the destination. You can be proud of this. That's why I'm telling the physicists, towards the fag end of life, they have come to the conclusion that you can never really know the universe unless the observer is factored in. This is the observer. Okay, who is the observer? Today they are trying to talk about this God particle, elusive particle. God is not a particle and he will be elusive forever unless you fix this. Who is the observer? I am the observer. Who am I? No answer. No answer. Our rishis just started off with this question. Who am I? So observer is more important than the observed. It did not take much time for them to come to this conclusion. That's why they are geniuses of the highest order. And that's why spiritual culture they have created. Where yogis, they have produced yogis in hundreds, sages in hundreds. People who have become perfect in this birth itself having attained human embodiment, they have made themselves complete and perfect. This year we are celebrating 150th birth anniversary of Sri Aurobindo, the great yogi. You know how transformation came on him. He went to UK and there he had his education. And his father thought, the education that's being given in India is very inferior kind. The best education, I need to send my children to London, and he sent his children there. And he doesn't want them to know even Indian languages. Okay. So Sri Aurobindo studied there. But somehow, maybe prarabdha, he was not that happy. He appeared for Indian Civil Service. And out of 250 students appeared for that. I think he qualified for that, he got 12th rank. And there actually, thereafter, that horse riding was there. That horse riding, he deliberately ignored it, didn't go. Twice they called him, twice he didn't go. Whether he doesn't want. He did not want to join Indian Civil Service. He had no desire for civil service. He said, my soul has always longed for poetry and philosophy and mysticism. I knew that administration is not for me. He didn't go, though he had all the intellect and brains. And then he came back and took up that post of an assistant professor in Baroda University. And afterward, that also didn't satisfy me, and then he came to participate in freedom struggle. He came to Calcutta. Then he was implicated in Alipur bomb case. He was 1 year he was in jail, in total transformation. He read Bhagavad Gita, he read Vivekananda, and then retired to the south, to Pondicherry. I became a great yogi, spent time with himself. Wonderful writings. So much of mysticism. A literary genius. The intellectual output is so phenomenal. But he said, all things I have written, I have not written actually, by conceiving in my mind. They're all my intuitive perceptions. I have perceived things directly for myself and I have put it in word form. So definitely you find it difficult to understand, even intellectually also. Because they are actually the outpourings of a sage, a spiritually illumined soul. And he says about man, a secret workshop of a living labor. A secret workshop of a living labor created by a divine craftsman. A secret workshop of a living labor where actually the divine craftsman has made possible the supermanhood, he says. And the beauty of human life is, unlike animals, unlike lower creation, the divine craftsman actually has allowed us certain freedom to craft our own destiny, divine destiny. Animals are completely helpless. They just follow the instinct. There is nothing that animal can do to change or to transform its nature by itself. It is totally helpless before nature. But we human beings are not created like that by God. Okay, the divine craftsman, Sri Aurobindo uses, has given us the freedom where you can attain to your supermanhood. His idea of supermanhood is this transcending the mind. Where supra-mind, he says. You transcend the mind and beyond that consciousness is there, that is supra-mind, he says. And how you will attain to that? Through consecrating your will, through willing participation. You have to voluntarily participate. You have to surrender voluntarily. I cannot make you surrender. If you want to Saranagati, we talk about Bhakti Yoga. We have to surrender to the divine. I cannot make you surrender to the divine. You have to understand things that this ego sense creates the mind, and mind is Prakriti, mind is disequilibrium. So to drop the mind is to drop the ego sense. For that you need to surrender to the divine. Total surrender. No questioning. Unconditional self-surrender we call in Vedanta. And Swamiji says beautifully, when surrender is inevitable, better surrender willingly and escape from misery, he says. Cut short time. If you just reflect carefully in nature, the Prakriti, whatever may be the incident in our lives, Whenever you have an occasion to suffer something in life, invariably it is because you have not accepted the divine will. Your will has come in clash with the divine will. You are questioning divine will. Why has it happened? It should not have happened the way it has happened. That means you are questioning divine will. Everything that happens in your life or anybody's life for that matter happens only by that one supreme will. If you surrender, if you understand this and total surrender, I have no issues absolutely. Whatever that need to happen through this personality, through this life will happen according to his will. Because after all, it is his. When the whole universe belongs to him, how can this belong to me? This also belongs to him. As he runs the whole universe, he runs this also, according to his will. So the Prakriti is hinting at you, whenever you have an occasion to suffer something in life, the Prakriti is telling you, Prakriti is giving the message that you have not surrendered yourself completely. Maybe you have partially surrendered, you will have a little less pain, but pain will come. So your surrender is not absolute, your surrender is not unconditional, your surrender is not complete. Hasten and complete the surrender and escape from misery. So if you don't, what happens? If you refuse to surrender, Prakriti will give blows. That's why Swamiji beautifully says, when it is inevitable to surrender, surrender willingly and joyously and escape from misery, he says. Be a wise man, that's what he says. Okay, even if the lady says that is all old school where we have come to learn our lessons. Even if you think this world is old school where we come to learn our lessons, learn your lessons fast. Be a smart kid, wise guy. Quickly you learn, escape from misery. Total surrender means then only God will remain in you. But that requires strength. That happens only when you intuitively perceive there is something beyond the ego sense. There is something beyond the mind. The perfection lies beyond the mind. When you understand that, when you have the deep intellectual conviction that this annihilation of ego sense or this letting go of desire will make me expand into the infinite, that conviction must settle down first, settle in you quickly, firmly. It must get deeply rooted there, and then surrender becomes easy. Otherwise, you will be afraid to surrender. No, if I drop this, maybe it's annihilation, I will die. No, you will not die. The death of ego is not the death of the person. Your personality will become universal personality. But we don't choose like that. We have reservations. We fear to surrender. But the mysticism begins. The individual becomes a mystic when he understands that this individuality is pseudo, it is fictitious. So the last conclusion that we will come in this world is this. After analyzing the world, the nature of things around, through deep reflection, the last conclusion that human being will arrive at is this, that there is no rhyme or reason for this universe. That's why it's Maya. No definite definition can be given here to this world. It defies all logic. It defies all definitions. You don't try to explain it logically. And the only thing that you need to is surrender and become divine. And so the last conclusion is this, that there is no reason or rhyme for this universe. Why things are happening that way? Who are you to question? The divine, he will support with his universe according to his will. No reason or rhyme for this universe. So this universe includes this body and mind. That means there is no reason or rhyme for the existence of this body and mind also. And that is the point when you are ready to detach yourself from the body and mind. Because this is irrational. We are always trying to rationalize the irrational. We are trying to rationalize the irrational. Then you understand. When you put the question, why is such a design like this? Let us say we have the body and mind. If you have this question, why a design like this? No answer, right? Then our Rishis have said that there is no reason or rhyme for this. It is just like that. So when there is no reason, then why I will drop it? I don't care to, get attached to it, identified with it. And that is the point when your ego sense gets detached from the body and mind, as it were. And that is the point of your spiritual realization, divine realization. And afterwards, you will have the choice to keep the body or not to keep the body. You can actually allow the body to live its life. You can allow the prarabdha. You can allow the body to float according to prarabdha. Or you don't want it because now you are experiencing your infinite divine beauty told. Your infinite existence has come into your experience. Before that experience, the present existence, the physical and the psychological existence, appears a nonsensical existence. Abominable, loathsome, disgusting, detestable, existence. And that's why most of the yogis prefer to quit the body, choose to leave the world. Except those who feel that they have a spiritual mission and, okay, let me give the spiritual instruction. There are a good number of spiritual speakers in the world, let me guide them. Buddha also wanted to give up the body like that, but he had a command. He had seen a divine vision in which he was given the instruction that keep the body, float it according to prarabdha, and that's why he lived full 80 years. And then he went on with his spiritual ministry. He had, doubt whether people would be able to understand him or not. But afterwards he had realized that there were a good number of people who were spiritually advanced. They needed some guidance. They needed some piece of spiritual advice. And he went about doing that for the next 40 years of his life. 40 years of spiritual ministry. And that's why God benefited immensely of his teachings in life. Traveled on foot across the length and breadth of that Gangetic plain, giving spiritual ministry everywhere. So, the last conclusion is this: there is no reason or rhyme for this universe, for this body and the mind. Why such a construct? Why such a design? Why such a makeup? When you put this question, you will not get a satisfactory answer. Okay, then I'll part with it. And that's the point of your realization. But we are trying to irrationalize the rational, right? We think this is we, and then this is the reality, and then I have to provide for it. A wrong premise to start off with. And now we are stuck in the Maya. And I said that two forces are simultaneously working, the centripetal and the centrifugal. God's Maya is the centrifugal force which wants us to be in bondage forever. And God's grace is the centripetal force which wants to liberate us from the bondage. Both the forces are simultaneously in operation. That's why this world is a world of paradoxes. You can never logically understand and explain this, except that you can transcend Prakriti at your will. That choice is always given to us, is always there with us. Make use of that and hasten your journey towards the final destination, namely God. The sooner, the better. Our people have always said that this human embodiment is the rarest gift, rarest of the rare gift. Way through yoga you can attain perfection. Okay. Make good use of that. Don't run after the material things. Only kids, individuals of baby intellect will run after those things. You are not fully mature, if you ask me. So even if you want to provide only for the basic necessities. Don't forget, never ever forget that this is the land of yoga. Yoga again, I don't mean, just the asanas. The real yoga is the Jnana yoga, Bhakti yoga. Which yoga you want to practice, you practice. But the goal must be clear, to realize the truth, to transcend the Prakriti, to go beyond mind. No, I will remain in my mind only, then it is an eternal disorder. No, you want order, then you have to go beyond the entropy. And you want to have order here in Prakriti, not possible. It is an eternal disequilibrium. Beyond the Prakriti lies the equilibrium, order. But that order actually is sustaining this disorder. This disorder cannot happen on its own. It needs a substratum, it needs adhisthana. And that adhisthana again is consciousness, God, the order. The disorder is happening in order. And so we have the choice to drop the disorder and go back to the order, to drop Prakriti and to go to Purusha, to drop mind and to go to consciousness. We shall stop here for today and meditate. We shall meditate for 2 minutes before we disperse. Om.